Hello, welcome to Enlightened Empaths with Samantha and Denise. We are very excited to introduce a wonderful guest for this week's episode, and I think she's going to have some inspiring and encouraging stories to share for all you budding and practicing intuitive mediums out there. Denise, would you like to introduce our guest?
I'd love to. Our guest tonight is Laura Wooster, Laura, who is an intuitive medium and spiritual teacher. In addition to offering private intuitive and mediumship sessions, Laura facilitates intuitive and psychic development classes. She's also a co-host of the Soul Circle radio program. I know that Laura travels extensively around New England and has an amazing presence. I've been able to see her work as a medium, and welcome, Laura. So glad you're here this evening.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation.
We are so excited to talk with you. If you could start off just by sharing with the listeners a little bit about your background and how you came to do the work you now do.
Sure. I'll try to make a long story really short.
That's okay. We like long stories too.
Well, probably like yourselves. I mean, nobody ever wakes up one morning as a child and say, "Hey, I want to grow up to be a psychic medium." You rarely ever hear that. But as a child, I always kind of knew things, and I would have precognitive dreams, and I kind of could read people, and I didn't recognize it at the time that I could do that, but I could. And just some unusual experiences used to happen around me when I was a child. I used to feel presence of spirit around me, but I really didn't know what it was at that time. I thought everybody could feel that. But as I got older, it did fade away a bit, and every once in a while it would come up pretty strongly, and then I would say, well, that's weird, and then move on. But when it really started to open up was around, I was a mother at that point with 2 young children. It's around 2004. I was dealing with anxiety and some depression and high blood pressure and all these things, and I needed to figure out a way to deal with that without too much interruption in my life. And so I started meditating, and so every day I would do a guided meditation for about 20 minutes for about 6 months or so. And little did I know, but I was allowing myself to open up my intuitive side quite a bit, and one day it just seemed to switch on all of a sudden, or it just appeared to be that way, and it came on really suddenly. Then all of a sudden I could start hearing people speaking to me, probably much to not necessarily like hearing their voice like I'm hearing your voices, but I could just feel the presence of spirit around me, and I could hear them, but I was hearing them like you would telepathically. So so in a brief moment, I had to go from figuring out what was happening to me, and that it happened so suddenly that it completely threw me over, and in a way, not physically, but just I'm like, okay, what's going on in my mind right now? I really didn't know what was happening. So I spent like a week and a half trying to figure out what was going on, if I should seek help or if I should go see a doctor. I don't know what was going on. But interestingly enough, though, synchronistically, a book from John Edward came into my awareness, and I realized this is what's happening. I had to stop and just read this book from cover to cover over like hours. I couldn't put it down. A lot of weird things were happening around that time frame as well, things that I couldn't deny, just physical things in the house that started happening, and like, all right, spirits were really speaking to me, but at the time I didn't know what it was. So that kind of led me on my journey to start asking a lot of questions, and it changed my life. And so at that point I started doing a lot of research, and then I ended up going to Development Circle, and everything just sort of synchronistically played out, and here I am, and 14 years later or so, and I never thought in a million years I'd be doing the things I'm doing today, ever. So that's my long story short.
No, I just want to know if there's any lineage, if there's any family. Is there anyone else in your family who's a sensitive or a medium?
I've heard rumors that people on one side of my family, my aunts were called the witches, like they always knew stuff. There was also a rumor I heard from a distant cousin on that same side who my father's side's Lithuanian, and someone had said, I'd heard through the grapevine from a distant cousin that they heard of someone in the village in Lithuania who was like the village witch and kind of knew everything, and everybody would go to just this distant cousin for information. So I don't know. That's all stories and folklore that kind of get passed down. But yeah, I think it does. I think it does get passed down quite a bit. And I know that one of my children, especially, I know is fairly tuned in, even though he won't admit it, because he's had similar experiences as a child that I used to have. So I do think it's genetic in a lot of ways.
I always wonder if it's genetic. I do think there is a genetic component, but I also wonder if the intuitive parent raises the child to be more open to little things and big things, and that in turn allows for the openness.
I believe so. I believe that we can have that influence from a parent. I know that my mother didn't mind talking about it. She actually took me to my first tarot card reading when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So she was open to this, and so I think if you're not scared of it, it's okay to explore it. Although I really wasn't consciously exploring it when I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was anything. I thought everybody could hear what I could hear when I was little, or I could feel what I felt, or I could see what I could see. So I didn't think much of it until later on when I realized it really wasn't something that everybody pays attention to.
I'd love for you to talk about how you found a supportive community during that time of opening up in 2004. Because you're reading and meditating, but I think it's so important to find like-minded people. So can you talk about how you found your people?
Oh, it's so key. Yeah, I know, we're so lucky nowadays. Even then, it was kind of tough to find like-minded people. But I did find an online community that was sort of a chat board type of thing where they all talked about weird metaphysical things, and I just came upon that, and it really was my lifeline for a while. And because then I wasn't weird there. I didn't really know how to even express what I was dealing with my own family, but they understood what I was talking about. And, and oftentimes, well, I'm only speaking for myself here, but, but oftentimes when we're opening up, when people are opening up, and this was my experience a little bit, that we kind of go off the deep end a little bit because we get so enthusiastic. You want to learn about everything. I was learning about angels, and I was doing ghost hunting just to try to understand what all of this was about and to figure out what my beliefs were and what felt true to me and what didn't. So I was focusing on the paranormal and angels and all these things, and I've kind of scaled back quite a bit as my beliefs have changed over the years, but yeah, so that was really key for me, and I really helped it in a lot of ways too. It helped to keep me grounded, because I was very lucky to have people within that small circle who actually were very grounded and kind of didn't allow people to kind of go off the deep end with it, which is very easy to do. So I was very fortunate. And over the years, I've also been extremely fortunate to, be part of a development circles where, like-minded people, we can share these experiences, and I've got a really tight-knit group of people around me that, as mentors and teachers and colleagues, that I'm just so blessed. So what I decided to do fairly recently, after talking to a colleague of mine, is that, because I was so blessed by that, I wanted to give that gift to somebody else. And what we ended up doing in my office here in Massachusetts was to start a free gathering group that we do once a month, where people can just come and just talk about crazy stuff, like this, quote unquote crazy stuff. It's not crazy to us, but where they can't talk about it to their colleagues at work, or they can't talk about to even their spouses or their children, that they can come in and talk about their own experiences and not feel like an outcast or being judged for how they perceive their world. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been so well received, and I was really adamant on not charging either. Just I didn't want any boundaries at all for people to not be able to come and enjoy that space. And that was my way of giving back, because I was so blessed to begin with.
That's absolutely
beautiful service to pay that forward, so to speak.
Yeah,
I
I
love
try.
that.
My feeling is anytime I learn something, I want to pass it forward. I've been so blessed with some amazing teachers, and I just that's one of the reasons why I started teaching, because people started asking me, so how did you learn? How did you figure this out? How did you, what did you do when you had my experiences? And so I started teaching as well to kind of pass that forward and share it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because that excitement you were just explaining, I think all of us can relate to that, where you just want to learn everything and know everything, and it's almost intoxicating. It's such a great thing. Did you do what I call drive-by readings? Like, would you be walking down the street and pick up something about someone and share it with them, or did you remain fairly grounded during that process?
That's a really good question. Well, here's the thing. I probably could have done that, but I'm actually a very extremely shy person, and I could never in a million years just go up to someone and start talking to them ever. So I was blessed in that way that I didn't. I, I had I had that boundary. I wouldn't just go up and talk to somebody out of the blue. I could have. There's a couple of times where stuff just like flew out of my, like words just came out of my mouth, especially when I was just opening up and I didn't have any control over what was happening. But it was mostly in my home when I would just say something and they'd be like, where did that come from? And it was like lottery numbers and all these things. And, and my husband's like, why didn't you go play that number? I said, I don't know. I just didn't do it. um, so it's just things like that. And occasionally I don't know why, but I'll just say things I don't even know why I'm saying it, and then it makes sense later on. And no, I never really did drive-by readings. Not really.
That's good. I call that spiritual vomiting, where you can't even hold it in. It's like it's going to come out whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, I've had moments where I've been teaching and I wasn't really doing readings, and then for example, I'm just throwing an example out. Like I was teaching a psychic development class, and I said to someone, "Oh, but your mother played the piano, right?" And she says, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, stop." That's not where I want to go. I'm not reading today. But yeah, so it just kind of comes out. Yeah, I don't think we can help ourselves. I'm sure you guys have had the same
Right.
experience.
Well, that's where the word medium comes from, because it's not coming from us, it's coming through us, and sometimes it's hard to control,
Yeah.
the intensity of that.
That's true. And some of the best mediums have no filter whatsoever. I mean, so yeah, it's good because it bypasses our logical brain. So and that's the best
Mhm.
way to just let the information flow through us.
And
Yeah.
that's a really good segue as far as being a very shy, quiet person.
Mhm.
How do you just, I always say to people, I get the hell out of the way and spirit works through me. And because I'm also very quiet and shy with most people. And is that because I've seen you on stage and you would never realize that you're a shy person. You don't present as that. So how do you counteract that? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening are saying, I get these feelings, I hear these things, I sense things, but I could never stand up in front of someone.
Well, that's been such a long process because I mean, I can actually get up in front of a group now and I'm terrified, but I can almost separate myself from that a bit because a part of me is like, oh my God. And the other part, like, I can't believe I'm standing up in front of all these people. And because I love having scripts and knowing what I'm going to say, and that just doesn't work in this field. It just doesn't happen that way. You can't have a script. You have no idea what you're going to say. But I think it's just practice and having one my one of my teachers always telling me it's not about you, it's about spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just step out of the way and let spirit talk. And he's always reminding me it's not about you. And if you're concerned about what people are thinking about you, if you're concerned about standing up in front of a group and being judged, you're not with spirit.
Mm,
And I
so
always
true.
remember that. And so it is so true. If I'm concerned about what people are thinking and my focus is on the people, my my uh, my presence is not with spirit, and it does make
And
sense.
you lose the link.
Yes, absolutely. And and everybody has had that experience, no matter what. Even the best mediums have had that experience where you're just not as plugged in for whatever reason. And
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
you realize, you really have to, bring your attention back to spirit. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I always describe that as like a three-way phone call. Like I have to pick up an extension, meaning I have to be on and tuned in and present.
Yes.
The client has to pick up an extension. He or she has to be open to the possibility of this happening. But also the loved one on the other side has to pick up the line and want this to happen. So it's
true.
kind of a perfect melody of, energies that have to come together in order for a really effective reading to occur.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about your husband. Like, how did he respond when you were like, okay, so yeah, I'm thinking about doing this?
Yeah. Well, he didn't quite know what to make of this because he's an engineer, very left brain. Very left brained. I'm very much the opposite, and he's very logical. But luckily, he didn't think I was completely crazy. He didn't know what to make of me half the time, but he didn't think I was completely out of my mind. Every once in a while, he'll joke with me. He goes, "You got that look again. Is there a disturbance in the force?" It's like, so he does have a sense of humor about it. But it's been 14 years, and he only recently saw me actually working. Only last year did he actually see me do this work. It took me that long to let me feel comfortable enough for him to see me work in that way.
Mm-hmm.
He'd never seen me deliver a message up until that point, which is really weird. He's okay. He's been supportive. Sometimes he doesn't. I mean, I'll be completely honest, and I am. Yeah, I'm an open book. There's been times when he struggles with the understanding that it is a life of service, and a lot of times he says, if you're so tired, why do you keep doing this work? Because it's not that I'm always tired. It's just that I do my best. I mean, we're human. I'm sure both of you understand too. It's, we do our best to separate ourselves from being the messenger and the human being. And sometimes I come home from, doing sessions all day. I might do several in a row. I feel like the walls are talking to me,
Yes.
and I just cannot deal, and it feels like everything is speaking, everything has a vibration, and so I just need to unplug completely, and he doesn't understand that. And I said, I've given my all energetically to everybody today, and people in the spirit world and here. I said, I just need to back up. So sometimes he does feel a little bit, you know um, maybe in number two in the relationship with spirit. So he's very patient with that, and I try to say, tonight we're just going out to dinner. We're not talking about work. We're not talking about any of this stuff. But really, it always seems like it's almost like there's like another person in this marriage. It's me and spirit and him.
Yeah.
And
that's
Totally get
huge.
that.
That is
Yeah.
so huge because you just nailed it.
Yeah.
And I think this happens for all of us,
Yeah.
is you hit that place where there's no turning back,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't not do the work, because it becomes such. It's a being of service, and how can I help, and is this the highest and best for this person that I'm talking to and the person in spirit. And someone asked me the other day, could you just not do this anymore? And I said, I don't know how I could not be that link anymore.
That's so true. Absolutely. I think back, I'm like, how could there's days I get, there is days that I guarantee that I walk out and I go, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And it's like, what am I doing? Am I out of my mind continuing to do this work? And then you get that one reading that just shifts that so quickly. Then this is what you're meant to be doing. And you can't go back. You just can't go back to the muggle life. It just doesn't work. And and you just know it's a calling, and it truly is a life of service. It's almost like having I can imagine it would be like if you're a minister or a priest or something, or a nun. So I kind of figure this must be what it's like, because you do have to. It feels like you're giving up part of your life for it, but I absolutely love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's challenging. It's one of the most challenging things I've ever dealt with in my whole life, because when you really can't progress. I mean, I know you guys know this too. You just can't progress in this work. I mean, obviously you're doing it as service to others, but you can't progress and help other people unless you work on yourself in the process.
Right.
So you have to become we all have our stuff we have to deal with, and that if we don't work on that, it gets in the way, and it doesn't allow us the energy to do this work. And so that's always a constant struggle with me. And I've changed so much in the past 14 years on my, this whole journey, and I'm still, dealing with the things I need to work on. And but I've come a long way at the same time. But I know I could never have gotten this far unless I dealt with my own stuff. So yeah.
I want to ask you a question about
Sure.
that, because something I feel exactly the same way. It's one thing I love is that, we're always learning and growing, and there's always more work to be done on ourselves. But one thing I have found is that oftentimes the clients that I attract at a certain time in my life reflect issues I'm working on in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have that happen to you too?
Sometimes, yes. And I'll get waves of the same message coming through. It depends on if it's the psychic piece or the mediumship piece, but
True.
But a lot of times patterns will show up. I agree with that.
Same here.
And so I always say that I learn as much from my readings as hopefully my clients learn.
Well, that's a really good point, because I was doing a reading the other day down on the coast, and I got really emotional because I could feel so strongly how much this man loved his daughter. And we're both sitting there, blubbering and crying. And I said, this is such a gift for me as well, because as an empath, but also as a medium, I get to feel this love that your father is sending to you. And do both of you get that as well?
Yes.
And
it's like they press that emotion onto my energy.
Right.
That's how I describe it.
And it's
speaking of that feeling. Yeah, true. Can you tell us, what was the one reading you did early on when you were opening up where you thought, holy cow, I think I do have this ability?
Oh, so many of them. I think it was when I first really, and I don't mean to get graphic, I'm so sorry, but it's just part of the whole process here. But I think it was when I was a part of I was in a development group. I literally felt so blended with the spirit that I completely understood what they felt like at the moment of their passing. And I'm not going to really get into how they passed, but it really wasn't pleasant, but it was, but I could feel everything. I could feel everything. I could feel what they were feeling. I could feel, and I knew right away what had happened. And it was just, and I said, wow, it literally felt so blended with them. I said, oh, there's definitely something to this. I can't be making this up. There's just no way. So it really did have quite an impact on me. And it's I'm sure you both know, is when we have different levels of blendedness with spirit, but when those times when you're so blended that you don't even realize that you're taking on the mannerisms and you're moving in the same way that they would be moving, and you don't even recognize that you're doing it until they say, stop, you're doing exactly what my dad used to do. It's exactly what he would do, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. It's in those moments when we kind of step out of the way, and
it's very humbling, isn't it?
It truly is. It truly is. And I think that was one of the first, way early on. This is probably within the first few months after, or maybe a year or so, I had that true blended feeling. It's like, this is for real.
So do you get similar, and that's a huge piece, is that the passing piece, because people bringing through evidential things as mediums that can prove that it's the person and not just, oh, your grandmother is nice. Yeah. Do you? I get specific things that if they pass from congestive heart, or if it was a cancer, and there's almost like a whole list of specific things that spirit will give me, or they'll show me a flash of someone I knew that passed in the same way. So do you get that as well?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that we can get that. We can literally feel it. Like I actually can feel if there's like leukemia, I can feel it running through my veins. So you can actually feel those things. If there's other situations where I know people maybe pass from a unique circumstance and I see them in my mind rather than feeling what it is, I see them so that I know I can cross-reference it to that. And sometimes things happen. It's truly amazing. And I don't mean to sound so, I don't know. I don't mean to sound insensitive when I say this, but I'm shocked sometimes about the number of ways people can pass.
Yes.
I know. And it's like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling. but I really
Mm-hmm.
don't know what this is. And then they'll say, I know exactly why you're getting that, but you would never in a million, they'll actually tell me, you'd never in a million years get how they pass, but you've got them. I know you have them just by the way you're describing it. And then they'll tell me what it is. And and that's the thing is, it's just, and I know my mind isn't having an influence on it because I have no reference to it. I'm just sharing exactly what I'm feeling. And yeah, so it's quite something.
What's your process in doing a reading before you start your day? Do you meditate? Do you open your chakras? Like, what's your routine?
I used to sit and listen to meditative music and, all the angel music, all these things. I used to do all of that. It got to a point where it's almost like I'm flipping a switch and then I'm ready. And so it doesn't seem to, I was like, I was trying to train myself to get to that space for years. And that now I just know when I sit down and I have a client sitting across from me that I'm ready. And if I'm feeling not quite in the space, I'll put on some really upbeat music. Like there's nothing like listening to Bruno Mars or something and just like, and just getting into that space. Because I find I can actually, rather than being in that, I mean, it's great. And sometimes I do think the really quiet angelic music is very helpful, but I think that's more for just meditation. But to really get into that space of connecting with somebody, it has to be a really high vibration. So happy music, anything that makes me want to dance and sing, I am right there. Yeah, so that's basically how I get started. If I'm finding that, if I know I'm going into a day, I've got a few hours before I have to work and I'm just not feeling it, I try, that's the one time I really try to get myself into a space of almost prayer and reminding myself why I'm doing this. And oftentimes it's because I've forgotten, for briefly that, oh, it's just another job, it's another day. Oh no, stop. you know, it's not another day. This is not another reading this is just not another reading. Every reading is unique. So I bring myself back to that place of what's the word? It just like a place of
Gratitude.
gratitude. Thank you. Gratitude and an honor for doing this work and just reminding myself, okay, thank you, Spirit. Thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to help. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping me partnering with me and bringing what I need to bring to this person. And, all those things. And it really does help to shift the energy and to remind me why I'm doing this. And like, we're all human. We get into days where like, why am I doing this? So it's just being very mindful of that.
What's the hardest part of that for you? Is it the energy of doing the work? Is it the grief that you see with your clients? What do you find the most challenging?
All of the above. It depends on the day, and yeah, the grief a lot of times, when I'm in the moment, I know you guys have the same experience. It's probably universal with all mediums, but when you're in the moment and you're delivering the message, you're just more of an observer for the most part. At least that's my experience here. And then after the fact, when you step away and you go, oh my gosh, how can someone lose two children over the course of 2 years? And still get up out of bed every day, and it
Mm-hmm.
just like floors me, and I'm so humbled by that, and I'm also just overwhelmed by what I'm amazed how strong people can be. So there are days where I wonder, that does kind of, especially as a mother, it really hits me hard. And then, energetically, yes, I mean, it can have a big impact physically. Recently, I had last year, just around this time last year, I had, again, I'm an open book, so here I am, where I had an autoimmune flare up, which I didn't even know I had at the time. So it was really bad. And I was getting ready to do a dem with somebody I'd never demmed with before, in front of a large group. And I didn't know what was going on. So that really woke me up to recognize how important it is to take care of my body, because it was basically Spirit was telling me, you better start paying attention because you're not eating well. You're eating all the things you're not supposed to eat. You know, um, and so I was diagnosed borderline lupus. So that's huge. And so that kind of woke me up. And I'm still working towards. I was already vegetarian as it was, but it's woken me up to really pay attention to my energy and managing my energy a bit better. So I'm keeping that in check. Still have to work with that, but from what I understand, I think that's fairly common with people who work with energy, is
You
autoimmune
know,
disease and things like that?
I agree. First of all, I'm so sorry you're dealing with that because I've heard it can be incredibly debilitating, and I thank you for sharing that for several reasons. I had a similar experience several years ago where I kept getting the message to slow down, and take better care of myself. And I was kind of pissed at my guides because I was like, okay, first of all, I have like this waiting list of people waiting to see me. I have 3 kids. I have like, when the hell am I supposed to slow down? And so I was kind of mad at them for giving me this message without giving me the means, motive, or opportunity to slow down. And I started to literally lose my abilities for a while. Like I had to just stop all readings because I felt that my guides were saying, if you don't slow down and take care of yourself, we're just shutting this whole operation down.
Right.
So I did stop doing readings for several months and just tried to, readjust and focus on my energy. And during that time, I emailed several well-known mediums and asked them if they'd ever experienced this before. And most of them got back to me and they all said no, and that I must be doing it wrong because mediumship shouldn't drain your energy. And I felt so alone and isolated. And then I read that Edgar Cayce was severely drained by his readings and was constantly given that message to slow down. But I feel like it's almost one of those things that healers and energy workers, they don't want to talk about. It's like, I don't know, it's like a taboo, but it does drain your energy.
It can, and you've got to. It's good that you brought that up, and I agree. I've heard. I can kind of understand why someone might say, if you're really channeling spirit, it won't drain you. It actually will energize you. And I think we've all had that experience. You just like, blah, 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 you get off, you get off like 5 hours after you've done your last message, and you're like still blah, 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 blah. And so I've had that experience. But I really believe it does. Because I do intuitive readings and I also do mediumship readings. So I think if I was just completely focused on spirit and just doing that all the time, it might be a little bit different, but it does kind of drain me going from more the psychic, because I'm reading the person's energy in front of me and connecting with spirit, which is a completely different energy. And that I will often go back and forth, and that can really drain me. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand why they would be saying, well, if you must be doing something wrong, you're not connecting with spirit. I get what they're saying, but at the same time, I agree with what you're saying, that I think if people are really honest, they probably would say that they do need to take time off, but maybe they just don't. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know any mediums who don't feel like they at least have to completely unplug, at least for a short amount of time, even for a few days.
Well, for me, it's not even the readings, the mediumship, it's not even that drains me. It's the emotions of my clients that I carry with me. Like after I hang up the phone or leave a client, I worry about them and I think about them and I think about like you were saying before, like what would it be like to lose 2 children in a lifetime, and why does that even happen? And then I start questioning my faith. And so, I mean, I'm sure part of that is my whole problem with thinking too much, but I carry my clients with me.
I don't have that problem at all, thinking too much. No. No, I totally get, but I've actually had to, I allow myself, this is what I've been trying to do. I allow myself the time from when I'm closing up my office to go home, or on the way home in my car. I allow myself to go to that space of, bless them. I can't believe they're going through this. And I can't imagine being in their shoes. And, I allow myself to get into that in a very empathic place. But then I bless that when I step back into my family life and just say, I leave this at the door. Occasionally it's not always easy to do that, because there are times, like I've said before, when my husband's like, okay, where are you? I'm like, I can't even talk right now. I'm gone. Leave me alone. But it's more of just because I've been working all day. But it's become a very conscious thing for me to just say, allow myself to do that for a short amount of time and then leave it there and cut the cord. And that's one of the things too, like, cause I'm actually, I don't know if you guys are having the same experience. I'm getting a huge amount of people coming in for readings who are super intuitive and super empathic people that
Yes.
are starting to, everybody's opening up and they don't know what to do with it, and they're just like drained and they've got anxiety and all these things. And one of the things I have suggested to many of them is to take like a Reiki class, because they often will teach, not that maybe they'll become a Reiki master or anything, but they'll often teach how to manage your energy, but also how to cut cords, energetic cords, with the person that you're working on. So it's all like energetic hygiene, all those things, and recognizing where your energy ends and other people's begins. Once we kind of are very conscious of that, it's a bit easier to say, okay, close the door, done. So you're not so attached to somebody else's energy, because that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen, especially if you want to be a
Energetic hygiene. I'm going to borrow that with your permission.
Oh, go right ahead. I'm sure it's somebody else's. I borrowed it from somebody else.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, so cord cutting is really a big thing, and I don't really do that. Like, I used to go through the process of actually visualizing cord cutting and all those things, and I will use that process with people who aren't familiar with cord cutting in my sessions. But nowadays, I expect it to happen, for the most part. There's some days it's harder. I have to be really conscious of it, but I usually just expect it.
But that's another really good point, is as we progress as our self-confidence, as we realize that, we're the vessel and it's coming through us, there are a lot of shortcuts that we take that used to take the whole preparation thing of, it's just very different. And you made an excellent point a few minutes ago of more and more people are waking up. And when we're blessed to work with people who are vibrating at a similar frequency, it's amazing, because it just opens the floodgates with intuition. It makes an easier bridge to make the link with someone in spirit. And it does. We get the benefits of that. But with that, I'm going to, kind of play devil's advocate. As more and more people are coming together and raising their vibration, we do have this density. And I think that's another client base that we're attracting at this point. And that's the ones to really make sure we take care of ourselves and protect ourselves energetically as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're all coming from different places and, different experiences. And it's funny. It's like I've had so many conversations lately about protection. Like, you got to protect yourself energetically. I guess cord cutting is like psychic protection in a way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I just go with the assumption that I'm protected, by spirit. And a lot of people say, aren't you nervous that you're going to take something home with you? Aren't you, aren't you nervous that, you're going to take your work home in ways you don't expect, and all those things. And I just don't anymore. I don't really, that word psychic protection really isn't in my vocabulary all that much. It's rare. I just expect it. Like, that this is not mine. And so it remains with the people it's meant to be with.
Oh, that's fabulous. It really is.
Makes it easier.
Can we switch gears a little bit? I want to talk, because I know so many of our listeners struggle with this question I'm going to ask you. You are a practicing Catholic, and I would love for you to tell listeners, what is that like? Have you ever struggled with that, talked to your priest about that, felt the need to confess that you're a medium? Like, how do you balance those two?
Okay, well, I do still consider myself a Catholic. I don't go to Mass anymore, but I've never had a conversation with any of the clergy about it. And it's funny, I actually have a friend who's part of the clergy, but we never really bring it up. But how do I reconcile it? The more that, if you look, I mean, I'm definitely not a Bible scholar at all. I don't know all of that. But, the Catholic religion is a very metaphysical religion. I mean, think of like, the chalice and the bread and the wine and all those things. And it's like, and it's a very metaphysical world or belief system. And think of all the saints that had psychic experiences that we are supposed to revere, Joan of Arc, Saint Joan of Arc, she was a medium.
I totally agree. And we're told to talk to our guardian angels.
Yes. So I personally have no problem reconciling the Catholic faith with what I do. I actually feel that much closer to, maybe not the way the Catholic Church organization is presenting Catholicism, but more of the connection to spirit that I feel still resonates with me. But I'm also, heartened by the number of like Catholic nuns who are interested in alternative healing, and they seem to be very open to those things, and so they may not be really obvious about it, but they're very open to it. So there's a lot more people within the Catholic Church who actually resonates with a lot of what we believe in as well, that they just can't be outwardly open to, and they may even be offering Reiki in some places that who knows? There's I personally have heard of nuns who know Reiki, have studied Reiki. So I don't know any personally, but I've heard of them. So it's not. I think we're coming around a bit. I don't think it's a topic to maybe alternative healing and mediumship.
Well, maybe it's another transition, similar to when they brought the folk nuns in. Remember when they introduced the nuns stopped wearing a habit and they started playing guitars? Maybe it's similar. Now we'll have Reiki nuns. I think it would be fabulous.
I think it would be fabulous. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not out there. I've heard of that they are out there. So, the wheels of change move very slowly in the Catholic Church, but they're there somewhere. So.
And you truly did. You put it perfectly that it's about spirit. It's about connection. It's about feeling that it's not so much the name of where you are. It's what you're feeling and doing.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
We can put any name we want on our faith, whether it be Catholicism or Muslim or whatever it might be, but obviously it's a very personal connection, and as long as you're feeling you've got that connection, whatever name we put on it, I'm good with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
So you also are a photographer.
I am. I don't do as much work. I do mostly just work for colleagues and friends who need some work. But I was a professional photographer full-time for over 20 years. And I do believe the creative process has a lot to do with the intuitive development, and also having to predict where I need to be in order to get the right shot. I think that really that really helped me with my intuitive development. I didn't even know it was happening.
See, I think that makes perfect sense because I have two sons, and one is more openly intuitive than the other. And he's my photographer, my musician, my chef. But he sees life through a different lens, no pun intended. And I think that with that creative side, whether it's art or music, or you are, I believe, hitting the same synapses as the intuitive development.
I agree, because it does come from, our intuition speaks through our creative mind. We have to be able to imagine things in order to perceive them. So I often will say, people say, what can I do to help myself become more psychic? I say, well, paint and listen to music and learn an instrument, whatever it might be, to get yourself out of your logical brain and do other things. So
get that right brain going.
Yeah.
Have you ever photographed a spirit?
I can't say I have. I don't think so. No, nothing I can really definitively say that I have, because I can, people talk about orbs and all those things. It's not that I don't believe in orbs. I just think it's rare to have them on film. Yeah, nothing that I can really not explain away.
Oh, a friend of mine had a creepy old house out in Starks, which is a place in Maine that none of you know, but anyway, I went in there and she said, long story short, I had to go in there and there was no one else in her house. I had to go get something. And she said, well, go upstairs and I went up there, and you've both done the ghost tours and hunting and that stuff. That's not my forte. And I just felt this incredible, overwhelming cold, and it was dark. Oh, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. So, of course, it's this farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. And when I went outside, I took my camera and I just walked around. I took pictures. And honest to God, when I went back and opened up, it was a digital camera. There was a face looking back out the window at me from the room where I had been so creeped out.
Wow.
And I called my friend and I was like, holy shit, I just saw a face in the window. So anyway, I think it's rare, I agree, but sometimes it just luck you can, because I do think definitely. You can catch them sometimes.
Oh, I totally believe it. I've seen some things, I'm like, oh my gosh, you just can't. I mean, there's a thing called matrix, I can't even say it. matrixing, um, where you can actually see images where there really isn't anything there. But I've actually seen photographs from people who I totally trust that it wasn't photoshopped at all, and I go, that's legit. There's something to that, because you cannot mistake it. There's literally someone standing there. Couldn't have been done with an app. It couldn't have been done with this. It's quite remarkable. And I've done a lot of ghost hunting, but I haven't done that in a long time. But I've had, it's rare to have what I feel is a genuine experience. At least that's in my experience, to say for sure that is something that is definitely paranormal. But I've had a few times where it just blew me away. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know there's something to it. I just absolutely know it's there. And we've had recordings, completely clear EVP recordings that you just cannot deny. You can't, it's not that you're making stuff up trying to figure out what's, in the static. This is clear as a bell, voices speaking, responding to what we're saying. And there's no way we could have made this happen. And it really blew me away. And I just know that I always say, like, we are actually part of their world. They're not part of ours, you know what I mean? They're just all around
Mm-hmm.
us. I feel like we're part of their ocean. So it's just, I'm in awe of all of this, and I can't wait until science catches up and can see and perceive, and someone comes up with something that can perceive things in an energetic level, and we just know that all these different intelligent beings are around us all the time, can communicate with us.
I think that's coming.
I think so too.
Oh,
I
me
cannot
too.
wait.
Definitely. And especially with everybody waking up so quickly. Something
Mm-hmm.
shifting.
Yeah, I
Agreed.
really do. Absolutely. And there's more and more people who are saying they're getting phone calls from people who've passed,
Oh.
I
know
love those stories. Or text messages. They can text.
Yeah, yeah, it's the craziest thing. I just love it. I love it. I love how
Well,
people communicate from beyond. It's just wonderful.
I do too. And the energy it takes for them to do that is just, how much they love us, that they want to get that message to us.
Hmm.
With all your experience of, working with the world of spirit, what do you think happens when we die?
Oh, I can go by what I feel I resonate with when I've heard the stories. So I'm going to go with that, because obviously I've never died, so I don't know. Well, not yet anyway, so I don't know. When I read and heard Anita Morjani's account of passing
Mm-hmm.
and experiencing what it was like to be a spirit, that to me, I got like head to toe chills of her explanation of her experience being a spirit. I think we literally just become energy, at least for a part of that, and we can experience being part of everybody and everything. Have you guys read her book, Dying to Be Me, and heard
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
and how she was able to
yes.
travel thousands of miles to be with her brother who was on the plane, and to understand what he was thinking and feeling, and
In seconds, she was there.
yeah, yeah, just by
Yeah.
thinking of her brother, she was right there, and that's, I feel, is a really clear representation of what spirit's like, to be in spirit. There was another, I recently saw a talk with two gentlemen. My mind just completely, I forgot their names, and that's terrible. But it was, the experience that they described was unbelievable. It was somewhat similar to Anita's story. So I think that there's something to it. So these two gentlemen, one is a doctor, and one was a gentleman.
Dr. Eben Alexander?
No, no. This
Okay.
guy just literally, he's been experiencing weird mediumistic events for like 20 years, but he's just now coming, coming to the forefront here a bit more, and actually speaking about his experiences. It's not Evan Alexander. I will find out the name, but it's so this doctor, he will actually experience patients who are passing over and actually see them and all these things. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And so this gentleman who passed in a car accident, he was with his family, and his son, who was 7 years old, survived. He had devastated, and he himself, the driver, the father, the gentleman who was speaking, he had devastating injuries that took months to get through, and he lost his wife and his other son. And he had experiences where he actually connected with them in spirit after while he was recovering. He actually connected with them. So the one thing that really blew me away, though, is he was brought to the hospital after the accident, and his wife had already passed. And a doctor that came in, and he actually saw his wife standing next to him, next to his
Wow.
patient. And at the same time, the gentleman who was in the accident, who was unconscious and on the gurney, was having the same experience of connecting with his wife. So it was a death shared death experience for the doctor and the patient and the person who passed. Amazing story, and it the similar there was a similar description than to Anita Majani's experience, where he was walking through the hallways of the hospital when he was close to death, although he came back, and the way he described being able to see people's souls, which
Ooh.
yes, he was able to understand people's motivations, why, what was underneath, or what was, because we all know, especially as mediums, I know you know this, that you see people at a soul level. And that's one of the gifts
Mm-hmm.
that I've gained over the years by doing readings for people, is I can really see people at a soul level. I can see their purpose. I can see their true goodness in them. But we can also see all the mud and stuff that's been slung on them over their lifetime, and what needs to
Right.
kind of be cleared away. And that's what he was able to see energetically as he walked through. He could understand what everybody was going through, and every soul had their story, and every soul was worthwhile, and every unbelievable. And I will get the name of the book so you guys so you can
Yeah, please do. I would love to read it.
yeah.
I
And
guess I was asking also because a lot of times when I do readings, the loved ones on the other side will tell me that they work over there. Like they have jobs and they do stuff. They're not just, sitting around playing a harp,
right.
singing gospel songs. And so I just wonder if you've had some of that information come through, and kind of what you envision that life between life stage. What does that look like to you, and from what your clients have told you?
I do think we have jobs on the other side. I think if we have a purpose in this lifetime that maybe we didn't fulfill in this lifetime, we're actually doing it over there, or we're continuing our purpose on the other side as well. I've had people come through, like, maybe not young children, but maybe young people who didn't get a chance to go to college or whatever, and they'll say, "Oh, your son, he's telling me he's teaching young children." And he said, "Oh, he wanted to go into education. He did want to become an elementary school teacher," all those things. And so I know it may not be the experience that we think, as a human, that this is not the same experience, but they're obviously experiencing it in some way. Yeah, it's so, I don't know, there's so many, I mean, I've heard so many things that resonate with me, but I think there's so many different levels. If you look at some of Dolores Cannon's work,
Love
all
her
these.
work.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, it's not just the human level. There's a whole bunch of other things, and so this is such a small part of our existence, is this life on Earth, such a small part of it. And we can experience it in so many different ways. So yeah,
Do
it's
you
absolutely.
believe in like lower levels and higher levels in terms of, I don't mean like heaven or hell, but do you believe that souls go to different levels based on the life they just led? Or do you think everyone kind of goes to the same place?
Mm, my sense is I've never really sensed people going to different places. Like, I know you said not heaven, hell, or anything like that. The only time I've ever kind of felt people a little bit diverted was if they needed, especially some healing. Like they need a lot of
Mm-hmm.
compassion and healing. It just feels like they're diverted. It's almost like you're at the hospital before you step back into the world. It's that kind of thing. That's the only time I ever felt segregation at all on the spirit side. Other people may have had other experiences, I know, but that's just my experience. And I know it's temporary. I just know that they're there being, and usually when they're in that space of healing, they have people around them who are close to them in this lifetime, or they're very close to them on the other side, like grandparents. I'll often see grandparents around, or parents even around people who are in that healing phase before they step fully into spirit. It's not that they're stuck or anything, because people talk about, oh, they're stuck, oh my gosh, people, I mean, how many times have you been, well, it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while I'll get someone to say, I had a reading and they told me my child was stuck. I'm like, that
Oh,
just takes
Oh,
me,
that's evil.
I know,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, no, 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 no. They're not stuck. They absolutely in the arms of your mom, and they always have some, they're never, ever alone, ever. We never go home alone. We always have someone there to
Never.
greet us. And if for some reason someone needs a little extra healing on the other side, they've got people right next to them that we love and respect, and we're happy that they're there with them. They never come in alone, ever. And that's one thing too. It's like that's my pet peeve. It's like, don't, that does not happen in my world.
No,
Nobody,
mine
No.
me
yeah, you're
either.
either here or you're there. Yeah. So it's
Well, sometimes I'm shown that kids will keep a foot in both worlds so that they can stay close to their parents while they're going through that grieving process. So it's definitely not stuck. It's just that they stay closer to the earth plane so they can, constantly give their parents reassuring energy that they're okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's part of, maybe the deal that they have with them is to stay close so they can help them through it. But I think also we're projecting a very human and physical world perception of that. I think we can
Oh,
be,
well said. Yeah.
and I it's not because, oh, well, if they're helping me, they can't be where they need to be. Some parents have said, well,
Mhm.
someone told me that because I'm missing them so badly that I'm holding them back. And I understand I do feel sometimes that people are really close to the people here that's left on earth, but it's not because they're not somewhere else. And they're everywhere at once. They're everywhere. That they actually can be in more than one place at once, and they're not being kept from anything. It's just, I think our souls are multidimensional. So I don't really feel like we're holding back anybody that from anything, but they can be present as well with us.
Right.
So.
Because
I totally agree. I always will say, like, just look at Padre Pio.
Mhm.
I mean, there are witnesses who saw him giving confession in two different churches in two different towns. So while he was a human in the flesh, he was able to bilocate. So if a human being can bilocate, imagine what we as spirit can do.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's been experience of people connecting with someone in spirit, and two people in the physical plane here in completely
Hmm.
two different locations experiencing the same spirit at the same time. There's crisis apparitions where people are in the process of crossing over, and then they show up to loved ones across the country at the same time. So if that's possible, we don't have to,
Exactly.
yeah, we don't. We put so many restrictions because of our own physical perception. I really believe
Well,
spirit is.
I mean, I get it. I mean, there's no judgment. I mean, every time I pray to God, I'm like, God, I'm really sorry to bug you. I know there's a ton of stuff going on with North Korea, but I just need you to help me with this issue. And then I think, what am I saying? Like, the creator can be wherever. So I get why people think that, but I think it's a good reminder of what you said. Like, we can't project our human vision of life onto the spirit world. That's a
Right.
really important reminder.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. So it's I cannot wait until, I mean, I can wait, but I can't wait until I get over there and kind of get a better sense of what it is to be and completely in energy, to be completely in spirit. It's amazing. It's amazing world. It truly is.
Oh, I can't wait to, well, I can't exactly like you said, but I'm looking forward because
Yeah.
when I go over there, I'm going to say, okay, Jesus, you need to get a cup of tea and sit down because I got some questions for you.
Right.
Why did it take until 2000 before women could be altar servers? I have a lot of questions.
That sounds like a question for the Pope.
yeah, yes.
Well, okay, so I want to ask you because people who listen to my other podcast, I love John Holland so much, and I refer to him so much on the podcast that listeners will send me emails that will say, what would your Johnny say to that? Because I call him my Johnny because I love him. I've read all of his works. I was so honored to study with him. I just think he's so authentic and so grounded and just so kind. And I know you've worked extensively with him. Could you talk about like how you two teamed up and don't shatter my illusions. Tell me how wonderful he is.
No, he is a wonderful man. I am very, very blessed to actually work for him. So, because I not only do I have, I mean, I usually don't talk about this too much, but not only do I do this work full time as far as being an intuitive and a medium, but I'm literally his admin assistant, so I work with him quite a bit. I always tell him, this is the best job ever. Like seriously, I am not exaggerating
No,
whatsoever.
I believe you.
Yeah, and he really is. I mean, and I have no problem saying this, but I did have him up on a pedestal at one point, especially at the very beginning, because soon after I became aware of all of this, Hay House Radio came on board, and they literally just started I think it was 2015, which was just like the year after I opened up quite a bit, and so I've I've been listening to him since day one, and then soon after I met him, and then I started working at his events and everything over the years. So I've really known him for like 12 years, but I've only recently, the past few years, have worked for him and as closely in his office and everything. So at the very beginning, like way back, I put him way up on that pedestal, and I will tell him straight out, I'm like, yeah, if he ever asked, I'd say, yeah, that pedestal is gone. But you know what? But you know what? It's been replaced with the utmost love and respect for him, because that beats any pedestal I could put anybody on. He really is. He is such a nice guy. There's things that he does for people that you'll never hear about. He really does care about people, and if something doesn't feel integrous to him, he won't do it. He really won't.
That's what I've always sensed about him. I'm so glad I'm right. I love that he is not competitive at all. You know how some intuitives are like, I don't know, they're just kind of competitive about who they are. And I love that John will find someone that he believes in, and he will support the hell out of them. Yeah. I think it's a good reminder of how we all should be as, workers of the light.
Yeah, it's I know it's being human, it's always a struggle anyways, I think, when we get into any profession, but he's worked really hard not to go down that path, and so yeah, I do have a lot of respect for him, and I'm so blessed to call him my teacher. I really am.
So do you do the platform stage mediumship yourself? Like, when was the first time you did that?
Oh my gosh, when was that? Officially, let me see. The first time I ever got up in front of a group was probably 2006. I was in a class, and there was like 25 people, and a teacher pulled me up and said, just do it. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. But it's like, but it was fine. It worked out fine. But to actually get up in front of a group, I know John's kicked me out a few times up on the platform. And I'll say, I'm not the best medium in the world. I've worked really, really, really hard to get, to get to the point I am. I'm definitely not the best. I have so much work to do still. So, but he's been so supportive in that, and pushing me out there and getting me out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it's scary, but he, like I said before, he's always been the one to say, if you're worried about what people are saying, or are the people sitting and watching, you're not with spirit. Like, all right, got it. Yeah, that's probably the most important.
That's such good advice.
Yeah.
And it also goes back to being of service. Very much
Absolutely.
so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're just the telephones. We're just the postman delivering the mail.
Mm-hmm.
We're not anything else. We're not the message. We're not the spirit. We're just the messenger.
Yes.
And, I think when we forget that, it's everybody's human. We forget that we're just the messenger. We're not the personality. We're not the star. We're not anything like that. It's just, remember, we're just the messenger. It doesn't matter who's delivering the message. It's what the message is, and does it get delivered. And I always try to keep that in mind all the time.
Also very well said.
How can people connect with you? Because you do phone readings as well, correct?
I do, yeah. They can just go right through my website, and it's laurawooster.com, LAURAWOOSTER. I work out of Circles of Wisdom in Andover, Mass., and I also have an office in North Andover, and I can book phone readings through either one.
And you also have some upcoming events. March 15th, the evening of Spirit Messages to benefit the Unitarian Church of Marlborough and Hudson in Hudson, Mass. Mm-hmm. And again on April 26th, Heavenly Connections and Evening of Spirit Messages at Circles of Wisdom in Andover, which are incredible.
Yes, that's a small group. It's only like 40 people at the Andover one. Yeah.
And how can people find your radio show?
I am on Blog Talk Radio, so you just go to Soul Circle Radio, I believe, if you put it in the search bar.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And so that's on iTunes too?
You know what? I don't know. I know you can go, isn't that bad? I'm so bad at that.
No, that's not. That's not. Totally understandable.
If you go to Blog Talk Radio, I think if you just put it into the search bar on Blog Talk, it'll come up, Soul Circle. Yeah. And I'll also be on Hay House Radio on March 12th with John Holland.
Ooh, are you excited about that?
I'm thrilled. It's like, it's funny. I was just saying the other day, it's like going to Carnegie Hall for years and watching somebody up on stage and never thinking you'll get up there. And then all of a sudden you get the call and say, oh, you get to come on, the stage at Carnegie Hall now, And it's so it's like a big deal for me. And I'm like, oh my
Getting
God.
on Hay House is like a writer getting on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Right? I know. And it's just like, I'm trying not to get my head into that too much because I'm like, oh my God. 'Cause literally that's what I cut my teeth on. Basically, when I was opening up, I listened to Hay House Radio all the time from day one.
Oh, me too.
Me too.
You too, Denise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that. It's such a great resource.
It truly is. Yeah, absolutely.
So when will you be on?
March 12th.
And that's at 3 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Mm-hmm. On hayhouseradio.com.
I know that because I listen to John Holland.
I love how you get all giddy when you're talking about it. I'm like, it's John Holland. Oh my God. Yeah.
I know. I will definitely tune in and listen to you. Well, we thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on our show. It's just been such a pleasure to talk to you. And we hope that all the listeners will check you out, and we will put links to your website and your events and to the Hay House Radio interview when this airs. We'll put that on our Facebook page.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful chatting with you both, and hopefully I'll see you around New Jersey or Maine or wherever we end up connecting again.
Yes. Thank you so much,
Definitely.
Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, so much for listening. If you want to send Denise and I a question for our upcoming Q&A, please do so on our Facebook page or enlightenedempaths@gmail.com. And in the meantime, we hope that you remember to show up, do great work, and share your light. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.